So right now my website sucks. There's nothing on it and my user can't do anything with it. I know how to write some JavaScript and keep myself updated, but let's bridge that gap. Let's let the user interact with the website to work with our JavaScript. So let's say, for example, I have a website where the user is buying something, and so I want to keep track. Think to yourself, what are you going to keep track of for this website? Well, I'm going to need to keep track of the quantity. In other words, I'm going to need to keep track of how many of this item the user wants. So I'm going to set quantity to be 0 because when they open my website, I'm assuming they haven't added anything into their shopping cart. I think that's a safe bet. And let's say I'm selling one particular thing on this website with one cost. And let's keep it simple this time. Let's say the cost is $20. All right, I want the user to actually be able to do some things to buy this. So one of the easiest ways for now is to introduce a button on your website. And this button element with a pair of opening and closing button tags, you can put some text for your button to say. So I could say add one to cart. So now at least my website has something. It has this button where I can add one to my shopping cart. Now, what do you do with buttons? You click them. Anytime you see a button, you want to click it. So when I click this button, I actually want to add one of this item to my cart. In other words, I want to increase my quantity from 0 to 1. I want to add 1. So you don't always just have to write JavaScript within the script tags. You can actually do some JavaScript outside. Every time you add a button on your website, you are probably expecting your user to click it. So I can add an Onclick attribute like this. I like to press enter a couple times, and I can actually write JavaScript very nicely here now. So when the user presses this button, they are adding one to their carts. In other words, they are increasing the quantity by 1. So because this is a number variable, I can do math to it. So I can take that variable and I can increase it by 1, semicolon, to end my line of code. Plus equals means increase, and we are increasing it by 1. Now I want to make sure my code works properly. In other words, I want to make sure that my quantity variable is storing the right value. So immediately after I increase it by 1, I want to know the value of my quantity variable. So I'm going to do a lovely console log displaying the value of this variable to myself. So now when I restart my web page, I Control-Shift-J to pull up my console, and I press the button once. You can see the value of my quantity variable is 1. If I press it again, it increases to 2, and my console lets me know what the value of that variable is. And each time I press it, I'm updated of the updated variable value, and I can see their quantity. Now, one last thing. Instead of just seeing a number, because sometimes I have a lot of variables and it's hard to keep track of, Instead of just seeing the number 1, I'm going to add some more detail to my console log message. So first, I'm going to say this console log message is going to start with the quantity is, these are just words. So I put them in my quotation. And then if I actually want to know what the quantity is, I'm going to add on my quantity variable to this message. So these are just words. I can put whatever I want in here and the console will say it. But when I add on a variable, I'm actually going to get the value of this variable. And this is good practice because now when I look at my website and I add one to cart, the quantity is 1. You don't have to know anything about my program to know what this message is displaying. And if I click it again, the quantity is 2, 3, 4, 5. So when you have many variables in your program, right now we're just working with 1. You can imagine that it would be hard to keep track of each variable or each number that's popping up in your console. So adding some extra words, some extra description to your console log messages is always a great idea. And that's how you use a button with JavaScript.